Okay, good evening, everyone. And Dr. Ametepe, thank you for joining us. I hope everyone is doing well.
We are
Yes.
okay, sir. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, so Doc, please, you can start now. Today we are not waiting for anyone, so please start.
Oh, only two. How many are they? Like how many people are we expecting? Hello. Hi.
I'm saying that we are expecting about 10 of them, but Dr. Paul is in Kenya and it's 9 p.m. already, so we cannot keep waiting for others.
Oh, okay. Okay. No one. Wait. Yeah. Can you please see my screen? Hello. Can you confirm if you can see my screen? Hello. Can anyone confirm seeing my screen sharing? There's sharing of my screen.
Yeah, I'm able to see. Hello.
And is it moving?
Yeah, it is moving. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So good evening to
I'm
all.
also seeing it.
I hope
Good evening,
everyone
Doctor.
is doing very well. So, yeah, I met you last week and we were able to do some level of introduction where we look at some concepts like conflict, peace, and all other associated conflict concepts associated with the study of peace and conflict. And so today we are looking at negotiations and we are looking at multi-party negotiations. We look at each subset of cross-cultural negotiations. And if we all on the continent will attest, no one country within the continent is made up of just one type of people or one group of people that looks the same, do everything together, and then engage in various activities without any infiltration from the outside world. No country, even in the world, is like that. Though in Europe and other places, we may find some which are predominantly so, but then almost every country globally has people from other backgrounds mixing their own people. And so we go through some brief introduction, look at negotiation, then we go to multi-party negotiation briefly, and then we zoom into cross-cultural negotiation. We look at some examples from the continent, some challenges one may face, and how to handle this as we go along. And so, to begin, generally, conflict is seen as something which is not so okay, as a condition that is not palatable, that needs to be worked on, removed completely, and then go beyond that to look at other important things in society. It is seen as just something episodic that just comes and it needs to be dealt with, and then society can move back to normal. And per the liberal and Republican views and even ways of dealing with conflicts, it is clear that their view or their conceptualization of conflict is something which is not okay and needs to be completely done away with. So per their views, conflict resolution was the main before they shifted into management in various ways. And so the liberal Republican approaches to this is to just engage in strict line yes or no questions, evidence-based, issue dealt with. We all get up and go, and one person wins, one person is in the fault, and we all get up and go. But then later, along the way, everything changed, where conflicts are seen as things which are very later views have come to draw a line here and make it clear for everybody to appreciate the fact that it is not an undesirable condition or thing that just needs to be completely removed from society. But then so far as human beings exist, we have differences in background, differences in goals, differences in aspirations, orientations. There's bound to be conflict. So far as your goals are different from mine, or we have the same goal, but the means to achieve these goals are different from each other, then there's a tendency for us to clash on some one or two ideals that may or may not be so okay for peace. And then it's other attendant of conflict. And so if we accept the fact that conflict is part of human existence and we are still here, then there is a need to rather work on other things than trying to remove it completely. We should rather look at it from the other side, where we rather should work on prevention, its management, its transformation, and then building peace or peace building from there. And it is believed that based on this, then we can be able to completely manage the whole issue of conflict. It is something we can't throw away, so we just have to live with. And if we remember when COVID recently approached or what's the name, tried to take down the human subgroup, what we realized was from the onset, we were told that we should be able to stay away from each other, so social distancing and a whole lot of things were put in place. Then along the way, they managed to find that so-called antidote to it, which we were all supposed to take. And after that, whether you took it or not, the whole thing was that. Now we just have to manage to live with it. And so if we should just manage to live with it, then that is what the antidote is for. So you go for it in case you have a problem with it, and then you manage through it, because it is not something we can completely remove. But as we speak, it looks like the globe has been able to deal with it in various ways that has managed to subdue it to its barest minimum. It is only in some countries that you still have it coming, especially during the cold seasons. And so if we want to prevent and transform or manage these conflicts, what do we do? So that is where we negotiate, we mediate, we conciliate or reconcile various parties to the conflict. And this we saw the other time in my presentation to the approaches that we used into dealing with conflicts and probably peace. And so going forward, we realize that there are various ways of handling conflicts. we have myriads of ways of going about trying to resolve conflicts. And this comes in various forms. Some people have even advocated that we can use another conflict or violence to quell conflicts. In that when parties are at each other and you try to mediate or facilitate a resolution and it is not working, you can use violence to also quell. So there are people or there are schools of thought that also hold this ideal that peaceful means of resolving conflicts, managing conflicts, transforming conflicts are not completely all the time right, in that there are times that you can not deal with it peacefully. You need to also go violent to be able to quell the violence. And so you meet it boot for boot, go fire for fire to be able to handle some of these conflict situations. Well, I have some of the handling styles: conflict resolution, conflict management, conflict prevention, conflict transformation, and then conflict suppression. So I come back to the house to find out if any of us or we have views or have some understanding of any of these that we have put there. Conflict resolution, conflict management, conflict prevention, conflict transformation, and conflict suppression. So I come back to the house. So my people, anyone with a view or with an understanding, a perception of any sort of any of these that you would want to share with us. And like we have agreed previously, no wrong or right answer. We are sharing views. So you can unmute yourself and then give a response to any of them that you are okay with or understand or are privy to.
Hello,
Hello.
Doc.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Let me make an attempt.
Okay, Paul.
Conflict resolution purports that conflict can be completely be completely addressed, and we know that conflict can be managed, transformed, but it is really very difficult to completely resolve it. Conflict management, the mechanisms put in place to address the ongoing conflict. And conflict prevention, uh, uh, putting measures to prevent conflict from exploding. And conflict transformation is where conflict has occurred, has been addressed, and the potential negative conflict effects of conflicts are being addressed by not necessarily resolving it. Then conflict suppression, in my understanding, what you said, fire for fire, sometimes using force, sometimes addressing the conflict that has already occurred. I think that is my own understanding, briefly.
Thank you very much, Paul. Anybody else or anyone else with a view? I have a Ni here who I didn't meet last week. Ni, are you here? Ni,
Yes, sir.
Did I meet you last week? Were you here? Nii, can you share a view on any of those concepts we have on the screen? Just brainstorming. Any understanding of any of them? Okay. It doesn't look like Nii is here. Okay. So let's move into them just briefly and then we move on. So like we said, we have all these styles of handling conflicts, and then people have studied conflicts across the board. So to my right, if you look at the screen, we have a diagram there called the Thomas Kilmann conflict model. And it's a model we use in understanding conflicts and how to handle them, you against them, and the various issues in between. We'll come back to that. So if we look to the left, we have the handling styles, and then we have conflict resolution as the first one. And Miller and his team in 2003 tell us that it is a variety of approaches aimed at terminating conflicts through the constructive solving of problems, distinct from management or transformation of conflict. So like Paul made us aware of, this is where the attempt is made to completely remove, like I said in the introduction, this undesirable experience or concept of conflict, because they concentrate on the destructive nature of conflicts, and then per that feel that it is not something that society should countenance. And so we should do our best to remove it from existence the moment it comes. Conflict management, on the other hand, emerged after. And this is where they look at conflicts and realize that now it's not something you can easily remove. It's not so easy to remove. And so we need to look at putting measures in place that aims to and through the parties involved in the conflict. So conflict management, you deal with the parties involved in the conflict, you work with them, and then do your best to remove the negative and destructive effects of the conflict by putting some measures in place that aims to remove it. So if you look at Bloomfield and Riley, they tell us that conflict management is a positive and constructive handling of difference and divergence. So difference here is what? The differences that may exist between the parties and the divergence that may also be there. So we want to remove this where the two parties part ways. Where there are differences, we want to remove those differences. So that is where he goes on to say rather, or they go on to say rather than advocating methods for removing conflict, which is conflict resolution, it addresses the more realistic question of managing conflict. How to deal with it in a constructive way, how to bring opposing sides together in a cooperative process, how to design a practical, achievable, cooperative system for the constructive management of the difference. So parties are believed to be in conflict due to differences that may exist between them. And if these differences exist, how do we handle the differences? So the differences, we put measures in place and make sure that we address that those questions that have been asked, how to deal with it in a constructive way. How do we do that? How do we manage to bring the parties together to cooperate in the process? How do we design a practical and an achievable way of going about things? And how do the parties cooperate within the system to make sure that constructively a resolution is achieved? These are the key things that conflict management looks at. Because conflict management apprises itself with the fact that conflicts cannot be entirely removed. And these two, the same handling methods are used if you go to the right. And so how do we manage to deal with conflicts? In 1974, the Killman model was designed. And then this is supposed to help us to deal with conflicts. So in trying to go into the conflict, you check what are the issues in there. What are the issues? And then if the parties feel like they want to dominate the process, then that is where you consider the two at the top, which is competing and collaborating on various levels. And that is where also when you realize that the level at which the parties want to cooperate is low. If it is low, then you consider those on the left vertically. So you are looking at competing and avoiding. And in competing, this is where you focus on the interests of the party. And you realize that one person or one of the parties is really not willing to. And so he finds the whole conflict process as a way of competing for his or her needs and achieving them without recourse to the interests of the other opposing party. And then the other way also, when cooperativeness is low and assertiveness is low, is also where you look at avoidance. And this is where the two parties make sure or take various ways of resolving their matter into their own hands by parting ways. They avoid the conflict and let it go the way it will go. So that is where they won't talk to each other. They separate everything. They are in various camps. Nobody cares about the other, and see how things turn out finally. When the parties are in the middle, you find middle grounds, whether the assertiveness or cooperativeness is in the middle, then you should be thinking of compromising. And this is where the parties on various levels are amenable to buy into each other's views. And so where this one makes it easy for you to make the parties reach a consensus, find a durable solution to the issue. They are ready to make some concessions here and there. Let go of this, gain that, and then we all go forward. The parties are not there to win whilst the other loses. In collaboration, this is where the parties see each other as partners. And then what do? Make sure that they all gain and benefit from a system that is there equally. And then in accommodation, you realize that you cannot win. The other party also realizes that they cannot win. And then in so doing, they open up and then let each other into their space. They accommodate each other. And so this is where maybe a husband and a wife, the man comes back, though the woman is not ready to engage, but then you have your food on the table. And if she has to get water for you in the bathroom, she'll put it there. But I won't tell you that I put the water because she's not ready to talk to you. She will accommodate you into various spaces. By the time you get back from work, the door is opened. Nobody is standing there. You get in. You do whatever you also have to do. When the man is also leaving, whatever he has to do, if it's to leave money, if it's to do some things, make sure things are working within the house, they do it. They accommodate each other on various levels, but still maintain their differences. And these are handling styles that we all meet or we have all deployed at various times. Oh, as for me, I won't mind him. He can do whatever he wants to do. And that is where you are avoiding. There is no way I am giving way for this party or this individual to get all this whilst I lose everything. That is when they are competing, accommodating each other on various ways, and collaboratively when they are ready to welcome each other in various ways. Finally, they compromise, and that is where we are getting to a durable solution, finding a durable end to the conflict. Conflict prevention, like Paul said, this is where they put conditions in place or methods or mechanisms or measures in place to make sure that even the conflict doesn't happen. We don't want it to come at all. So they collaborate and make sure that their relationship they have now is not ruined in any way by the conflict. Oh, I realize that you are doing this thing and I think it is not the right thing. If you do not take care, it may mar our friendship or ruin our relationship. And then the two of them, oh, so how can I, or how do I do it so that next time I don't end up hurting you? That party says it. And so the second party or the first party now takes cues from there and does things in various ways not to hurt the other party. Also, conflict transformation, on the other hand, is also where processes are put in place to make sure that we are able to transform a stale relationship, a destructive relationship, into positive, constructive ones. Here, conflict is seen as something that can be there. So with the three that are here, there is an acceptance that conflict can occur. And if it occurs, how do we deal with it? So prevention, they prevent it from coming in the first place. In transformation, it has come. How do we change the way we behave towards each other? How do we look at things or view things so that we can be able to live side by side? So here, the emphasis on changing the attitudes and perceptions of the parties involved in the conflict. Ledrat was the first person to introduce this somewhere in 1987, and then moved on into Azar in 1987, but Ledrat moved it into various expansive positions when it became necessary for him to look at this approach instead of a resolution. So he goes further to look at conflicts as something that is not an infirmity, but it's something that humans have to deal with and live with every day. So here the emphasis is on the relationships that exist, especially when you realize that the parties to the conflict will continue relating to each other. They live within the same community, they live within the same space. The two parties are two different ethnic groups within the same region. There are two different religions within the same country or state or province. And so you deal with this conflict with that relationship in mind, where your interest is not to end the relationship, but to make sure that you deal with the conflict in such a way that the relationship can be built on. And conflict suppression, the last one down there, is also where you realize that the parties are unwilling to deal with the issue, but a powerful party to them can come in and force them into agreement, either by using force or use whatever measures And that is where sometimes we realize that within the international community, when diplomacy fails, they try to go for sanctions, trade embargoes, and a whole lot of things to make sure that the parties think and come to the table. So the emphasis here is on power and how power can be used to deal with conflicts. So if you look at the diagram to the right, it is basically on conflict transformation. And if you look at the blue in the middle, the small one, that is conflict transformation. And conflict transformation is looking at 5 different angles of dealing with a conflict. So the first one to the left, let me start with the green. The green one says we are looking at what? Personal transformation. And this is where we are looking at what? The very individuals within. So we are looking at the people themselves. How do we transform their ways of doing things? So this is where we are looking at what? Their perceptions in general. And so we want to change the way they see things, the type of anger that is in them, and try to change this into various ways, positive ways, where they will be ready to embrace the other party into their space. With the context transformation, we are looking at the very environment the parties are in. Is the environment so harsh that it is not helping them? Is it where the conflict is coming from? Is it climate change issues that is leading to forceful takeover of land that is breeding the conflict? How do we, in various ways, find middle ground in this and make sure that we provide them the necessities of these groups so they can live side by side? Structure transformation too. This is where we are looking at what? The very way the society is structured. What is the power like between the parties involved in the conflict? Are they on the same level, power asymmetry? Is the relationship between them one above the other? One is more powerful and is at the top, whilst the other one is subservient and subordinate to that party. We look for all these things and then make sure that we are able to bring the parties in various ways to see each other and consider each other as equals. You also make sure that the various things within the society, within the structural setup, if it's the culture, if it's the traditions of the parties that are sources of the conflict, you also attack some of this and make sure that you are able to bring successful transformation. The orange one, oh no, that is yellow. The yellow one down there is actor transformation. So I'm going around this way, clockwise. And so I'm on actor transformation. And here we are looking at what the various parties involved. What is the leadership style in there? Do we need to consider the way the society is being led? What are the things that are being done when it comes to leading the group that we have to look at? What are the type of people that are found in there? So this one, we are looking at the various actors involved and then the various parties that are also behind them possibly. The other day we mentioned that in conflicts, when you are analyzing conflict, you may come to terms with people that are in the front lines. And those are the people, primary actors in the conflict. There are secondary actors and there are tertiary actors. Most of the secondary and tertiary actors, especially when they are involved directly in the conflict, you may not see them. They are far off. You look for them, the various constituencies that are involved, and see how best you can deal with them. Then we have issue transformation, and this is where we are looking at the contested grounds within which the conflict is being perpetrated. What are they contesting over? What are the issues they are fighting over? How do we build compromises and let them collaborate to lead to an amicable resolution? Can we link or delink some of the things, decouple issues, and let them understand where they stand? This is where you find ways of cultural practices and other things that can make the parties see eye to eye. Maybe in the past there were intermarriages. There were various ways in which the parties, saw each other as partners in the past. You look for these opportunities, thrive on them to make sure that you find resolution. In all this sphere, we are looking at what? Transforming a violent situation into a peaceful one. So, in going further, these are some ways through which conflicts can be amicably brought to its barest minimum within societies. We have conciliation, we have mediation, we have arbitration, we have adjudication or litigation, and people separate that sometimes and put litigation also on a different platform, where some of us may also accept that they are in various ways almost the same. Maybe if we have some legalese here, they may be able to tell us the differences. But then on various levels, those two are, almost the same in various ways possible. So these are some Western approaches, but in various ways too, there are things we also practice here directly within our continent. Some of them, they made us throw overboard during slavery and colonialism, but finally we are all getting back there, where they also are moving back there to some of these peaceful ways of resolving differences. So if I may come back to the class, what are these? And in what situations do we use them? And why do we even have to use them in the first place? So anyone who is willing to talk can unmute and then at least tell us what these are and the differences therein, if you can. No wrong answers. Anyone here who wants to tell us or pick any of them and brief us on that? Litigation, stroke adjudication, arbitration, mediation, negotiation, and or reconciliation. Do I have people here? My people, are you here? Or my line is gone off?
No, you are here.
Oh, okay. The way the class has gone quiet. Okay. So in the absence of any response, let's move on. Negotiation, which happens to be the major thing we are talking about today. Let's delve into it. So we have been told by Fisher et al. That negotiation is where they put a structured form of conversation or dialogue between parties about their issues of conflict, especially when their opinions and other things differ. Opinions, goals, views, orientations, and other things differ. But then you want the parties to dialogue face to face. When the parties, just the two of them, are supposed to come together and dialogue, then we are looking at what? Negotiation. Though in other cases, their representatives can also meet and dialogue or negotiate on various levels. Take, for instance, two companies that have disagreement. Maybe one is a supplier of some very product to one to perform another duty elsewhere, and the thing doesn't come on time, and the other party loses the contract. They sit down face to face and negotiate. Other times, their lawyers can sit down and negotiate on various levels when the parties are themselves not ready to see eye to eye. In a divorce proceeding, this can also happen where the two lawyers representing the two groups can sit and also brainstorm on issues. Maybe the woman's uncle and the man's uncle or fathers can also meet. Family heads can meet and also negotiate on issues. So negotiation is where the parties are directly in touch with each other, or their representatives are in touch, and where they make each other understand where they stand. Mia, Ramsbottom, and Woodhouse also define it as a process whereby the parties within the conflict seek to settle or resolve their conflicts. So this one, we are looking at the parties involved in the conflict, seeking various ways to settle or resolve their conflict. They meet face to face, judge, and find various ways. University for Peace also considers this as communication governed by pre-established procedures. So it's a level of communication, and communication normally two parties that send information across to each other, the other party processes and then also gets back. So they are communicating and they are using pre-established procedures, some form of guidelines, especially at the international level, where guidelines are followed for the negotiation to go through. Or it can also be between their representatives who are also maybe in one way or the other involved in the conflict or dispute. And this is by Miller, 2003. If we go back to the previous slide, negotiation, which happens to be the fourth one, is what we just spoke about. Going to the top, litigation is where we are talking of using the formal courts. And the courts are supposed to directly engage these parties, where evidence is adduced and a judgment is given by a formally trained judge. And the parties are supposed to also go through a formally predetermined structure of case administration and all the steps that are supposed to be taken, evidences, witnesses submitted, and everything before the case begins. And with that one, it is a win-lose approach. With arbitration also, a party or trained group of individuals also sit in judgment. And then when they sit in judgment, it's also, that is where people also refer to it as, what's the name, a commission of inquiry of some sort, where they sit and also listen to the various parties involved in the conflict. And evidence is produced. Sometimes you even come with facts, maps, and all other evidences, just like a court. But this one, you have a panel sitting there who listen to you and then engage the parties on various levels and find a resolution between them. So that one has a third-party introduction. Also, mediation also has a third party, but then with mediation, the third party can also be just an individual. So just like a chief within your village, a clan head, a pastor, a church elder, an imam from the mosque, a superior at work can also come into a conflict situation and then liaise with the parties on various levels and find resolution between them. So this neutral third party does not make a decision. The parties are those who make their decision. And then the mediator only is a middle ground facilitator. He doesn't engage in the decision making. He only makes sure that he facilitates the process and makes sure that the parties come to a resolution. So the decisions that are made at the end comes from the parties to the conflict and not the mediator. But in arbitration, the decision is made by that third party. And in reconciliation, also the emphasis is on relationships. And this is where they come together and make sure that the parties see eye to eye. And then at the end, the parties are reunited. So reconciliation, where the relationship between the parties also becomes something that we want to look at beyond the conflict. Then we bring in reconciliation, deal with the issues involved, and then the parties are reconciled. Going forward, negotiation is a direct process in that, like I said, the parties communicate. The parties come together and communicate or talk to each other in various ways to deal with the differences between them. And this is where the parties would have realized that the costs of the conflict is more than they thought it would be. Just like America going to attack Iran and realizing that, it is not going to be easy. Because Trump told us that he was going to do that in just some hours or days. And as we speak, since March, this is about the 4th month or the 5th month we are in, and the conflict is still dragging on. And so practically, the parties realizing that it is not going to help them can in various ways decide to sit and negotiate. They call for a truce, they sit together and find ways of dealing with the issue, or they send their representatives to go engage and find a middle ground somewhere so that the parties finally can in various ways talk to each other and then they resolve their differences. The goal here, as Young tells us, is to reach an agreement through a joint decision making between the parties. Joint decision making. So the parties come together and make sure that they find a resolution to their disagreement together and not one party dumping it on the other or the other party not being so okay to engage in resolving the issue. So the goal of negotiation is to make sure that there is an agreement jointly attained or achieved by the parties involved in the conflict. The critical thing in here for negotiation is communication. As we mentioned earlier, the parties will have to communicate. And so when the parties are not willing to communicate, you as a negotiator or one who is in the middle need to find ways of making the parties talk to each other. And so it is in this communication that we will be able to find meaning into the differences, the fears, the interests that the parties held that led to the conflict in the first place. When do we engage in this? Negotiation should normally take place before the conflict. Because sometimes when the conflict becomes too much, it gets to that level where the parties are not willing to engage any longer. When it gets to that level, negotiation becomes very difficult to do. All after the conflict and when the conflict has subsided in various ways, gone down a lot, that is where the parties can be able to sit and look at each other and talk about the issues that led to the escalation in the first place. We have two types, positional or collaborative negotiations. What are these? The positional negotiation is where there is competition severe competition between the parties, especially when one decides that my interest supersedes the other. When one decides that my interest supersedes that of the other person, and so are unwilling on various levels to engage in any discussion to bring an amicable, durable solution to the impasse. And this one is normally very, very competitive. It's competitive when the parties are competing against each other. And parties make various inconsiderate demands. And these demands, sometimes being inconsiderate, are also so difficult to meet, especially when it is from a superior to a subordinate. When it is from a superior to a subordinate, it is very difficult to meet. Last week, I remember mentioning that I chanced upon a conflict situation where a man slapped the wife in front of the children. And the woman also said, for me to understand and agree to a resolution, and the man compensating me, then he has to understand and agree that I also have to slap him in front of our kids and say some of the things he said to me in the process when he handed me that slap and the things he said. And so when these inconsiderate demands are made, sometimes it makes it very, very difficult for the other party. And the man was so unwilling to allow such a thing to happen. The man was not ready to allow such a thing to happen. Though the conflict was resolved later, but a whole lot went into it. So where the desire of one of the parties is to win and not ready to collaborate with the other, draw compromises to resolve amicably the dissent between them. The collaborative negotiation is where the parties, are easily amenable to understand each other. They also then, in various ways, tell each other or educate each other on their differences and how these differences led to their conflict and how they can, on various ways, find middle grounds and, resolve the differences between them, where their fears and needs are met equally for the parties to both be happy, and then it produces a win-win situation for all. Negotiations is something that is used universally in the business atmosphere, internationally between countries, on the global stage, where currently there are negotiations going on between US and Iran, facilitated by their representatives, in countries such as in Pakistan, and now Turkey has also waded into it, and they are trying in various ways to find various amicable ways to resolve. There are negotiations going on the international stage between Ukraine and Russia also to find various ways of dealing with the issue. Israel has, however, pulled out of negotiations between them and Palestine, and as we speak, are causing a whole lot of devastation in Gaza. But in doing negotiations, there are some things that matter. Our differences in cultural backgrounds. So these cultural peculiarities are things we have to take note of. And that is the center of our discussion this evening. And these differences can be where to hold the negotiation, so the settings of or the place to hold the negotiations, in preparing for the negotiations, what are the things to be done, the interaction itself, and various follow-ups that we are supposed to do after a form of agreement has been reached. Multi-party negotiations. So this is where we are looking at where we have parties more than necessary to a conflict, and where these parties, actors, or stakeholders have differences in backgrounds, in ideologies, in religion, in ethnic, in racial, religious, and gender even coming in. And so where these differences marked clearly and seem like something that can mar the negotiation process, there is the need for the parties, whoever is leading the negotiation, to engage in investigating and making sure that they are able to note the differences between the parties before the parties sit. You just don't get up and facilitate a negotiation without knowing some of these issues that can easily derail. Years ago, when I was out there in Germany, there was a resolution attempt that was made for parties to negotiate, parties involved in conflict in Turkey, to engage each other and find a resolution to an impasse between them. When the parties came together, unfortunately, Germany was hosting this. And in Germany, they serve dishes mostly with pork. The Germans eat pork a lot in various forms. And so most of their protein is normally from there. The Turks are also mostly Muslims. And Muslims don't eat pork. And when it was time for lunch, the lunch that was served, they used pork. And so what do you imagine will happen? There was a problem. There was a stalemate. The other side said, okay, we want to go out there, get something to eat and come back. And that is how they didn't come back. Finally, when they contacted them after hours of not returning, they were at the border crossing into Turkey, because they said they were going to get something to eat. And everything they found in Germany had some pork or protein made from a pig in there. So they decided to leave. They just stretched that beyond the normal because they could have found fish and other things, but they just wanted to make a statement. So you see a religious thing becoming an impediment in this negotiation process. So there is the need to research into the backgrounds and the differences between the parties before you bring them for negotiation, so that their orientations don't hinder the dialogue and the agreement that you want to build between them. The importance of multi-party negotiations, we realize that it is something that we need to build peace, create stable countries or stable societies, and also help build resilient countries. And so it's been used in various places. Negotiations have gone on at various levels. Example, in South Africa after apartheid, where whites and blacks negotiated on various levels, where even the various black groups such as the Twani, the Zulu, the San, the Khois, and all these other sub-South African black groups need to come in and find various ways of dealing with their differences. In Ghana, after military rule, these things have been done, and that's what led to the 1992 Republican Constitution, and its aftermath. In Rwanda, it's also being used where the Tutsis and the Hutus had to engage in finding various ways of building their nation amicably and peacefully after the genocide of 1994. And as we speak, I mentioned negotiations going on globally on various levels, trying to find amicable resolution to differences. Cross-cultural negotiations. This is where we are looking at negotiations between people from different cultural backgrounds. And this can be a language barrier, it can be food background, it can be music. It can be in the form of music, it can be cultural practices or adherences, and it can come in various levels, impeding the negotiation process. So when you realize that the parties speak different languages, what do? You make sure that you use a language that both parties can understand each other. And where you realize that one has upper hand in one language more than the other who doesn't understand the language that is adopted should be at the rudimentary proficiency level so that they can also be able to partake in whatever is being discussed. So when the parties are from different language backgrounds, make sure that you are able to bridge the language barrier for the parties to accommodate each other and bridge their various lingual differences. So on various levels, cross-cultural negotiations can be very, very challenging. Like I said, if you forgo or forget or neglect some of these issues that are inherent, you may find problems. You may find problems. So there is a need to investigate the parties, know their differences and their interests and what they really are in the conflict for, and find ways of addressing them. It can be very, very challenging if you ignore any part of that. So when you engage in proper preparation, investigation and preparation, you'll be able to negotiate a positive outcome from various groups. What are some tips we should adopt or keep in mind? We should understand that cultural differences exist between the two parties, or if you are the party in negotiations, the two parties are the parties jawing together. And as they jaw, they should be able to take cognizance of their differences. And these differences between you and the other party, the moment they are managed very well, can lead to a very good outcome. These cultural differences normally have significant ways of contributing to this. It has various ways of even bridging or communicating, because some words can be used by some and cannot be used by others, especially when gender also comes in. When a woman and a man are sitting at the table, there may be words that men will feel comfortable with, but women may not, especially when we are looking at some conflicts within some castes or religious backgrounds. Words and how they are used also matter, because they inform how we behave, our attitudes, and everything. So when you say 8 o'clock or 8 a.m., to someone, 8 a.m. may sound like you are supposed to leave home at 8 a.m. and get to the place at 8. So that is where you emphasize that the start time is 8. So they should leave earlier and get there by 8. So how we behave towards time is that. And in Ghana, if I could testify, when you give someone a time, you say it is 4 p.m., the person will be like, is it 4 exactly? Or 4:35? which is the African way of observing time. Time flows. It is not static. And so people take various ways of understanding their time. And we have something we call what? African time or black man time. Because we don't see time to be very static. So we say afternoon. Oh, let's meet in the afternoon. Than saying let's meet at 2 p.m. When you ask in the afternoon what time, the person is like, okay, between 2 and 3. So time flows, and our attitudes towards time is different. But when you tell a German it's at 4 p.m., at 3:55 he is there. At 3:50 they are there. While the African is now leaving home and will get there by 4:30. So we should know these differences when we are getting in touch with our other partners, so that one party doesn't come early and feels that I have come and the party is not coming and they leave before the negotiation starts. You should also take cognizance of hierarchy, who is at the top and who is at the base, and see how best we bring these issues to bear in the decision making. And so, before you get into any negotiation, make sure you understand the values, the customs, and beliefs of these parties. The customs, beliefs, and the values of the parties involved in the conflict. So, in the continent, we have also in various ways engaged in negotiations and cross-cultural negotiations or multi-party negotiations. And so these have been done between people who have different views of life and what life is about, what goes into the things they do and everything. And this diversity comes from our various orientations and socialization we've gone through. And it has various positive or negative directions on whatever the outcome of a negotiation is. And the continent has religious, ethnic, racial, language, region, geographical, political, ideological, and other affiliation issues that are supposed to be looked at. It can even be political, party affiliation, political ideology. Is it capitalist? Is it socialist? Is it communist? All these issues have been thrown at the continent from time to time, and they all form part of our lives. 2, the colonial, what's the name? The colonialists that also were in charge of various countries also had some influence on the way the countries within the continent and the people inherent in the continent view things that they do in life. And these differences have various ways of contributing to either peace or conflict. And so, negotiations have become part of our lives. And if you see how they took over our land and other things, they claim that they were negotiations that were held. And in some cases, payments were made. Whilst our people also said in various places that nothing like that was done. If you go to Zimbabwe, go to Zambia, go to South Africa, there are arguments still going on about colonial acquisitions of spaces. So, as the continent went into the liberal and democratic processes since the 1980s, negotiation has become something that has become a center to resolving various conflicts. And in the political sphere, it has led to participation of all groups within the various spaces, political spaces, into bringing their views and then finding an amicable resolution or charting a path which they find positive in the directions in which they want to go. in determining their own destiny. So multi-party negotiations can be used in doing various things. In the political sphere, it can help us engender political reforms where we build and make sure that parties that are not included or that are hitherto sidelined are brought into the discussion of conflict and peace. Governance and policy reforms, where we realize that there are differences in there and there are things we can do positively to encourage parties that are hitherto do not see each other or view each other in the same light to do so. And this is where we build peace and reconciliation commissions and committees to make sure that they unite the various parties. Election-related reforms too are also done by negotiating. So the parties on both sides, whether incumbent and the opposition and all those other groups, all come together and see eye to eye, find various ways of using their communicative processes to cause reforms to what they find as an affront to their democratic processes. And so in the political sphere, various forms of negotiations have been had. These are some special cases selected where a whole lot of negotiations have gone on in the past. And in Kenya, in Liberia, in Mozambique, in Cote d'Ivoire, in South Africa, all these places have had experiences of multi-party negotiations. The parties to some of these issues normally happen to be the various political parties, ethnic groups, religious groups, and all those group. And then in the UN setup, you have the United Nations as a party, you have the AU as a party, you have various sub-regional blocks such as the East Africa bloc, the South African bloc, the ECOWAS. There, you have various governments of the various countries and their security forces as part of the discussions going on. And then you have various international organizations, NGOs, CSOs, FBOs, who all come into the picture to negotiate for. So we take a 5 minutes break and we come back and go into multi-party negotiations on the continent fully. So 5 minutes break. Okay, break over. So let's engage further. Are you here? Are we all back? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes, you are here.
Yes, we are all here. Like some of us are here. I cannot say we are all here. Some of us are here.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
some of
that's
us are
why.
here.
So if I have one or two
We are
people.
here. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's go further. So, multi-party negotiations on the continent of Africa. So, one of the first things we should be considering is building collaborative frameworks for peace-building initiatives. That is a major thing. Since you want to negotiate, you should look for various frameworks that will make the parties collaborate and move forward. What are these? Firstly, we have to engage the local communities for peace. This is where in various communities, they have various structures within the communities that they originally depend on to make peace. And for you to involve them and make them feel like they are part of the system and the decision that will be arrived at in the end, they are part of it and have a sense of ownership of the process, you need to include them. And when you fall on some of these culturally built forms or systems within the various societies or communities or groups or religious associations, you are able to make inroads and get to the people quickly. And so you need to involve the local communities in every peace-building attempt you want to make. The various communities need to be brought to bear. Their leaders, the members, everybody needs to be there. Unless it is those groups that it is the leaders who talk for the groups, fine. And that same leader is the one who, when he says they should go and fight, they will go. When he says they should stop, they will stop. Then there is the need to engage them. There is no way you will talk about peace in Iran and not involve the Ayatollah side in the whole discussion and think that you have made anything or you can arrive at anything. Nothing will happen because he is the one in charge of government. And so you need these people. In various countries, religious leaders also hold a whole lot of sway on whatever decisions that are made. So make sure that you liaise with these people to move on. 2, to build these collaborative frameworks, you need to collaborate with grassroots organizations. What are some of the organizations they already even have within their communities? Some have various, what's the name, peace building groups that are there. Some have women's associations. Some have youth groups. Some have men's association. They have various units, work group or worker group that exist within the society. You want to talk about environmental or water pollution. You are talking of river bodies and you don't involve the fishermen. You aren't getting anywhere with that. They may have fishermen association. They have fisher women or women who also sell the fish association, and they have various associations. You need to look for them, collaborate with them, leverage on their existence and the various networks they already have within the system to be able to address the various conflicts you want to look at. Going further in building these frameworks, we need to foster partnerships among the stakeholders. We need to foster partnerships among the stakeholders so that we can get our peace restored. How do we go about this? 1, we should strengthen the alliances for conflict resolution. or for various negotiations you want to engage in. And so how do we do this? This is where you are supposed to make sure that alliances are developed. You develop various networks that are there. And every stakeholder within the system also needs to come on board. There are various capacities, there are various resources are brought to bear within what you are trying to do, so that they can all put together various needs that are required to resolve the differences. You cannot be going for a negotiation and it is only one party that is bringing or supporting the process. All parties to the negotiation need to be involved in various ways. Where if one buys water, the other one should be providing lunch. And a whole lot of other things that go into the whole process must be looked at. But if only one person says, okay, you should all come to my house and let's do it there, then the tendency for decisions to sway, and the other party saying that the decisions were swayed in favor of the other party because of ABC is there. So you should know that your decisions arrived at per that process may not hold. 2, create networks for knowledge sharing. This is where you are supposed to make sure you fall on the local systems again. They already have their knowledge systems. They know things you don't know. They know who came first. They know who came last. They know, they have all the stories together. They have all the stories that they will have to deploy already mapped out. And so, when you, on the other hand, fail to, sorry, I have a, and so if, sorry about that, if it so happens that you ignore these knowledge systems they already have, they know the pathways, they know where their water bodies are, they know where you shouldn't cite what, they have mapped out their systems already. You cannot know the area more than they do. That is why till now, America is unable to get into Iran. It cannot. It can only use aerial warfare because they know their terrain. If they remember what happened in Somalia, if they remember what happened in Ethiopia before our independence, when Ethiopia was not able to be captured, if they remember what went on in Afghanistan, it tells you that everybody knows their own terrain more than you, the outsider. So you need them first to help you gather information about their knowledge systems and then be able to use that to build peace or use it for the negotiations you want to engage in. Thirdly, engage international actors in peace efforts. You shouldn't forget that. And earlier on, we mentioned that international NGOs, CSOs, CBOs, FBOs, all these people are part of the system. You cannot engage parties to a conflict in a resolution without looking at what these parties have done in the background first, involving them, gaining knowledge from them before continuing from where they left off. You can't ignore them. You need all these international actors to come on board so that you can be able to bring all the issues together and give some level of legitimacy to your discussions and the agreements you arrive at. Without this, some parties may, in various ways, abstain from the process and also discourage others or their members, some of their members who are decision makers, from partaking in the process. So international actors must be looked at. There are citizens of the various countries or communities who are out there, who are experts out there, who in various ways even fund some of these conflicts. Buy weapons, fund, give them money, buy food and other things and send to them to continue perpetuating, especially in chieftaincy issues, ethnic issues, religious issues. And so if you do not involve these actors also, you may go further and think that you are getting there, but you still will not get to where you are going. Building coalitions for sustained peace is the final thing we are supposed to do in this part. And this is where we are looking at what? Forming various groups or member groups that go beyond the normal, so that you have a uniform view of issues. All the parties are united. The moment they are united and are seeing things the way you want to see them, they are able to build peace, give peace a chance in a very sustainable way, and grant stability to their societies. The second major thing we are supposed to look at is to engage stakeholders in multi-party negotiations for lasting stability. We need to engage all stakeholders in that form of negotiation. If you leave out a party, then you won't be getting to where you are going to. You won't be getting there. So let's see what we are supposed to do here. Community leaders are supposed to be engaged so that there will be some level of effectiveness in dealing with issues. So you cannot deal with various parties, especially in our context, without looking at their leaders. Like I mentioned earlier, it is the leaders that take some of these decisions. And so if you do not involve them or include them, decisions are arrived at, they come and tell them, they can sometimes shoot down some of these decisions. And before you realize, the conflict is back. And so you need them to guide the process. You need them to participate in the process before you can, in various ways, gain some leverage in dealing with conflict situations. Promoting inclusive discussions among factions. You make sure that everybody has a say. Equal time allotments are made to all. You do not let somebody talk for hours and another speak for minutes and tell them time is up. You make sure you assign equal time to the parties so they can all vent. And you listen to everybody. But when they are digressing from the main issues, you call them back. But you make sure you give them the leverage and the time to talk, air their views, so that a informed decision can be made based on that. Because if you do not listen to all, and you do not have a pool of views to work with, then your whole negotiation process will be lopsided, one-sided, and decisions you arrive at may not hold because the parties can pull out or say they didn't partake or they are not satisfied with the process. And before you realize, you've just wasted your own time and may even be considered as a failure for going there and not being able to form these networks or include everybody, listen to everybody to, give solutions that are, airtight and that satisfies everybody. 3, utilizing mediators with regional expertise. Like we said, there may be people who have preceded you. There may be other organizations who are there who have also worked on this same conflict situation you have gone to work with. You cannot go there and forget them. Just like when Kofi Annan was tasked to go to Kenya after the election violence in about 2009, 2011, thereabouts. He had to fall on some of the people that went earlier, like ex-president J.A. Kufuor of Ghana, who was tasked earlier to go there, but was unable to achieve much. And then all the other UN representatives and envoys that also participated. He roped all of them into his team and was able to fall on them and their expertise to arrive at a resolution. And in 100 days, he was able to resolve the impasse between Mwai Kibaki and what was the name of the other person? It has escaped. And so you need to make sure that you leverage on those who are there, who have the history, who know the culture, who know the parties to the conflict. And per that, you'll be able to receive the hearing you require to deal with the issues that you want to deal with. Building consensus through shared objectives. This is where you make sure you listen to their goals and the means through which they think the goals can be achieved. The objectives that the parties want to, accomplish in the conflict situation all have to be looked at. If this is sidelined or this is not dealt with and not brought to bear, where they all cooperate on various levels, commitment levels may dwindle. Commitment levels may dwindle because I don't see how the negotiations we are about to have will benefit me and my group. So then I won't partake. So our objectives and their objectives and those people's objectives and everybody's objectives matter in negotiating and getting to a very good level. Strategies for effective people-centered negotiation. What are some of the strategies we can deploy to make sure that we are able to negotiate very well on the continent and also lay emphasis on the people that are in the conflict situation? The people that are in the conflict situation, people-centeredness of the negotiation process needs to be enforced. How do we do this? The first thing is we empower the communities in the negotiation process. So if the communities are not, power is not equal between the parties involved in the conflict, then you need to find ways of balancing some of these and make sure that you implement various policies that balances power between them. If this is left off, then sorry, you may not be able to get what you are looking for. Building consensus among the groups is the next thing we have to look at. And this is where within consensus building, it means that you are supposed to communicate, engage, dialogue is the main thing here. So all the groups that you find within the settings are supposed to be part of the dialogue process. In doing this, as they come and go, the differences between them will begin to be bridged. There will be bridging that will take place informally. They will now be able to even start talking to each other. And this will lead to unity being formed, and lasting peace can be the final thing you can achieve easily. But if you do not build consensus among these groups, you may not be getting to where you aim to get to. So, continuing the strategies, the second major thing we are supposed to do is to foster engagement amongst diverse stakeholders. And we have already mentioned the stakeholders already. So promoting inter-stakeholder dialogue. This is where you make sure that you can create various levels of engagement. Sometimes it can even be a WhatsApp group It can be a Telegram group. It can be a Facebook group that you form, where you engage all the parties there. You put all the parties on board, where they can be able to, or you even start sharing some videos on the need for each other, where they are watching, and some of these things will lead to softening the stance of the various parties involved. Make sure that you have ways of engaging all these diverse groups in various dialogues uniformly. And you balance the differences on various levels to enforce peace. 2, strengthening cross-community alliances. And how do we do this? Cross-community here, we are looking at communities involved in various disagreements that are different on various parts. So when it is 2 different communities, 2 different groups, 2 different associations, you see how best you can bring them on board to view things in a uniform way, bridge the gaps where all the things they are interests are, they bring all to bear. And so in forming some of these cross-community alliances, the parties are talking. So this is where you form inter-group peace groups. You can form inter-community peace groups, male peace groups, female peace group, choosing members from the various communities. And before you realize, they start talking, seeing things differently, engage in differences, and are able to move forward and help society or you in your efforts to build peace or negotiate between them. Thirdly, engagement tactics for diverse interests. And this is where you are making sure that all the views and the various tactics that people have, engaged in are brought to bear. What were some of the ways through which they decided to deal with this conflict in the past? What were some of the issues they negotiated on? What are the different things they are bringing now that were not part of the previous ones? You need to know all these things. So when you are able to do all this, you will be able to find middle grounds and the salient issues for which you need to negotiate on. So, people-centered, we are still emphasizing the people within the conflict and how their needs must be brought to bear. The last thing we are supposed to do, major, is to enhance collaboration for lasting peace initiatives. How do we do this? The 4 ways are to collaborate or drop collaborative framework for development. So you develop various frameworks that brings all the parties to the forefront. None of the parties is left in the background. Because if you leave them in the background, some of the issues that led to the conflict, the root issues, the structural issues that may have led to the conflict, you won't find them. You need to bring all the parties together. And then through that, through their ventings, through their engagements, you'll be able to come up with framework, very positive ones, that can deal with all the issues involved in the conflict. Or else you may start and you meet an impediment and you don't know how to surmount it and the process stalls. 2, synergizing efforts across the sectors. And this is where you are also making sure that you are able to bring all the energies together. This is where you are looking at all the views, all the issues, and you synthesize them into one particular format where you will be able to comprehensively engage them and find a solution. Integrating local voices in peace-building efforts also, where you make sure that their views, their voices, their interests are all captured in various ways and brought into the picture. Finally, you leverage on technology for participation. Like I mentioned earlier, you can form a WhatsApp platform, you can form what's the name? Put some YouTube videos there for them to watch. you can form various Telegram, Facebook platforms for which they can engage. Technology is also a very good way, but you make sure that you set ground rules too, where you also even don't allow people to, just interject. Sometimes it can just be you who sends them various videos and things to watch in preparedness for the negotiations, and don't allow the parties to put anything, which may lead to somebody putting something derogatory that may derail the process you are engaged in. Now technology has come and is staying with us and has made ways of dealing with each other easier, like the way I am here right now and Paul is in Kenya and can still hear me and I can hear him and we are all engaging. So whether the parties are across the globe, you can leverage on technology and let everybody participate, even if it's phone calls. If it has to be video calls and all that, you have to find ways of involving technology and making sure that you have inclusive outcomes in this. The third major thing we are supposed to do is to promote collective security through inclusive people engagement. Collective security. So you make sure all the parties feel secured. All the parties, they can say what they want to say and nobody is heckling anybody. Nobody will go behind the scenes to go and attack anyone. You integrate local voices into security discussions. You ask them, what can we do to make you feel safe in your community? What can we do to make you feel safe in your household? What do you want us to do to make sure that you are okay? And in doing all this, when they say the things they want to say and they are doable, when you do it for them, they feel like they own that process. Their sense of ownership is high. And then you'll be able to bring all their perspectives and their views into the whole thing and find a very positive way of arriving at very positive decisions. 2, facilitating grassroots involvement. Here, the people on the ground, and we are still talking about inclusive people engagement, the people should be involved in the process, like we've said severally. When you involve all of them and there are various organizations and associations and groups into this, it helps in making decisions that can lead to various positive outcomes. Empower civil society participation too. We have already mentioned that they are also parties to the negotiation process. You cannot go through trying to resolve an issue without involving civil society, especially when they are on the ground and have already partaken in previous processes. You need them because civil society has become so integral to social living today that you cannot remove them from whatever plans you have. To have sustainable peace, you need them to be part of your processes, the negotiation you are holding, and everything you are engaging. Collective engagement for security solutions. This is where you make sure that all the stakeholders come in with their security issues, you promote their various needs, and make sure that they all engage responsibly in the various things you are doing. You also build trust through community involvement. How do we do this? You make sure that you foster relationships among the stakeholders. Relationships, their voices, their various differences, their values, their customs are brought to bear. If these are not taken into cognizance in the processes leading to finding a resolution, then you may not safely land in your attempts to find peace. Creating safe spaces for dialogue. Like I said, the venues for discussion should be way out of any of the two parties' space or domain, so that the other party will also feel safe within that space. You look for neutral spots where everybody can also access, not to go and pick a place that you have to go about 10 floors to the top or 20 floors and they don't even have a working elevator. And you have people who are disabled coming in and they are unable to get to the top. So you consider the places that you even have to have these open discussions at and make sure that the places provide that safety. If it's to have police officers around or have army officers there to protect the vicinity and the environs of where you're having that stakeholder engagement and negotiation, then you need to do that so that you have the people being free, feeling safe to engage without being heckled or fear of victimization from anyone. You create synergies among civil society actors too, where you make sure that all those organizations, the NGOs, LVOs, CSOs themselves, and what's the name? Other faith-based associations are all brought to bear to engage in finding a very safe way of engaging the parties. So you make sure that there is networking for them, and then you can also have a way of leveraging on diverse expertise for solutions, which we have already mentioned as well. Promoting collective security through inclusive people engagement, which are some of the things we have already mentioned. And so this one, I'll only take the last point there, which is what building coalitions for sustained peace. This one, you are forming groups. So if you need, what's the name, community watchdogs to perform a task around some point in time, they should be there. If you need former police people to be there, they should be there. You need government and non-governmental agencies and organizations to all be there so that you'll be able to keep the peace going. Like last week when we said peace is a process, it is a process because it is something that you have to work on and continuously work on to arrive at peaceful ends. There are some challenges that we can meet whilst doing this. We have already mentioned two earlier, where we spoke about language and we spoke about what's the name, cultural differences as well. And so we rehash them here as challenges. And so you make sure that cultural differences you are able to navigate. And that's where we said, well, you should be able to, investigate, research on the parties and know where they are sensitive. You don't bring pork to the table when you know that they do not eat pork. You bring cola when you know cola means it's a symbol for peacemaking. And when you have anybody visit your house, you give them cola, like in the northern part of Ghana. If you want to talk about peace and you do not give cola, you have already created a vacuum there, which can go around and come and harm you. So you should know their needs. You should know their cultural sensitive areas that you can leverage on to promote effective dialogue and negotiations. Role of tradition, make sure that the values, if it is their music, if it is the pouring of libation, as we do on the continent, that will make the parties feel or have that sense of belonging in the ways in which you want to engage. You need it. Make sure you have the genes available for the parties to pour libation, invoke the presence of their ancestors and their gods, who they believe should be part of the process to be able to get to a peaceful outlook. Also, identify interests effectively, make sure you take note of all their interests. The moment an interest that has been vented is let to slip through the cracks and is not addressed, the party feels cheated or ill-treated, and so may not effectively cooperate in finding a resolution to the impasse that is there. Approach in various ways should make sure or should look at all the participants that are there and make sure that their views, their ways, everything is brought to bear. Make sure logistical challenges are also overcome. Like I said, make sure that the elevators are working in various ways. Make sure that the logistics you need, if it is transport, for the parties to move from point A to point C where they are meeting, you make it sure it is available. The parties that are also party B, moving from part B to the point of convergence, which is C, should be made. If parties are moving from D also to the A to go and meet, make sure that they also have their transportation provided. You will not provide transportation and say it picked these people and so cannot come and pick you, so you people should find a way of getting here. Then you have already erred. Make sure you have adequate logistical provisioning for all the parties involved in the negotiation to move and get to wherever they are supposed to. So how do we enhance multi-party negotiation frameworks for safe governance within the continent? One, we should mobilize grassroots movements for peace. The grassroots, we need that grassroots because the conflicts are found within the grassroots, and so we need the grassroots movements to be able to work on peace. So encourage local communities to engage in dialogues. You should encourage them to engage in the various dialogues you are having. Two, build the coalitions amongst diverse groups. You make sure that all the groups have various representations on various groups or associations that you are forming. If you go and it is a market conflict that is going on, you should make sure that the onion sellers have a representation, tomato sellers also have a representation, yam sellers have a representation. You should have all of them there. If it is two, you pick two from each. You don't pick one from here, two from here, and come and make justifications for it. If you have justifications for not equally having equal memberships, please communicate that. If it is based on their numbers, so you are doing quota, let them know this from the onset. You don't choose one from here, choose two from here, they all come before you now start talking. And the other person feels like, why am I alone here when all the other people are two or three? You let them know from the beginning. Why that? Or else the other party feels like, no, I was not supposed to be here in the first place. Engage civil society organizations and also foster inclusivity. Include everybody in there. Also strengthen community bonds for conflict resolution, where you make sure that diverse community diversity is brought to bear. You make sure that you marry all the groups that are involved in the conflict on uniform grounds. You make sure that you facilitate dialogue. Also, community leaders and elders must be consulted on every engagement you want to have, and make sure they are represented in various ways, or else decisions you arrive at may not hold. Enhance local conflict resolution mechanisms. Make sure their ways of resolving their issues are also brought to bear, since they normally provide very good ways of resolving these issues than what you think you know and are well educated on that you are bringing to them. Such top-bottom approaches don't work. The bottom-up ones work, where you engage the locals to give you their ways, and they feel a part of the process, they own the process, they participate in the process, end it well, and monitor the process even for you, and give you feedback from time to time as to how things are going on the ground. Mobilize young or the youth also for various engagements. We all know that in these conflicts, it is the youth that normally are engaged in the whole fight. So in your multi-party engagements, make sure that the youth are represented. In most places, it is just the elders. The youth are left out. But when the conflict or there is a breakout, they want the youth to go and fight. You need them here. You need women's groups. You need men's group. You need all the groups, religious groups, ethnic groups, racial groups. You need all of them there. You also create platforms for the youth to vent, so that it wouldn't be like it is elders who are talking. You cannot talk. The youth should also be given grounds to also say what they have to say. Also make sure that you provide skills for youth development within those communities. In the process of negotiation, provide them with avenues to help them in various ways to develop. Thank you very much. So I bring the presentation to a close, but then we open the grounds for discussions, questions and answers, and then we can end the session. So comments, questions, answers, further discussions in various ways. If anyone has anything they want to talk about further. So we open the, okay, Hayford. You have a hand up.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Not about a question, but I just want to say something about the presentation. In fact, it is a normal presentation, very cool, very understandable. But what I just maybe going forward, I just want, if you can do that, I just want your presentation to be, very interactive. It has been almost 1 hour and some minutes without pausing to ask any other questions. Maybe I break it out, but maybe going forward, I just want your presentation, your class to be very interactive as other lectures do, because I think you have been presenting over 1 hour without any breaking for any other questions. And what is over? So maybe going forward, I just want you to consider them so that we may follow the discussions below, because this is one of the very important program and very important discussions. Without any interactive, it could be one of the normal lectures that we have been experiencing. You'll be listening, and when you get to a time for you to ask questions and other part, you forget you're not taking it. Some of us, our time has schedule of work. We are still in the car going home. So if it is not interactive, when it's time for you to even ask questions or whatever, you may not even follow the class. So sir, maybe going forward, as I said, it should be like, just please, so that it will be very interactive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Were you here from the beginning anyway? I want us to talk now. You and I. Were you here from the beginning? Hayford, were you here from the onset of the class?
I joined the class after 15 minutes. Stop.
And so you were here when I asked questions and didn't receive a response from the class?
Yes, sir. As I was saying, I joined the class after 15 minutes when the class came in, or when the class started.
Yeah, after 15 minutes, because what I'm even talking about was just in the second part after the 5 minutes break.
Oh, okay.
And before the break too, I asked several questions, and the house went quiet on me.
Oh, no, no, no,
Or if I
no.
should ask, Ike, are you here? Did you experience or anybody here experience these interactive moments where there were no responses from anyone?
Yes. You asked severally, and I think nobody responded. And you even tried to find out whether they are still there with you. So maybe he didn't hear, but it is not your intention to make the class maybe a voiceover because you severally I heard you asking whether they are there and whether they can hear you. So
Okay,
What?
thank you very much, Mike, for the response. So, Hayford, on various levels, I try to involve the class. And then at other times, I asked questions. And then in my class, you can always interject with your questions and ask. I don't have, let me present before you ask. No, anytime you have an interjection or a question or something you want to share, why not? You can. But then I have asked severally and didn't get responses, so I continued delivering. So I've taken your comment in good faith, and I'll make sure going forward I engage in that further. But then I tried earlier and there were no responses. Anybody wants to comment
Yes,
or
sir. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah.
This Reverend.
Yes, Reverend.
Yeah, let me commend you. Yesterday and today, yesterday I was traveling. I was in a commercial bus when the lecture began. So I could not participate, even though I was listening, because I was in a commercial bus. It did not give me the opportunity. I couldn't talk, even though peace were in my ears, listening everything perfectly. And today too, it was same where I went. I was coming back home from 5 up to this moment that I arrived home. But I listened everything. But you gave a platform to the class to contribute, to ask questions. You even ask questions for the class to contribute their mind. But I think the first one, no, the second one, there was only one person who spoke. But I was in a commercial bus that people were there. There was a lot of noise because I muted my microphone that will not interrupt the class. So I just want to say that the one who just placed that submission, the platform was given, but sometimes the class was quiet. It was not as a result of our facilitator, but as a result of ourselves, the class. So I want to comment and also pray because it was a good and a fantastic lecture. I've heard it from the start to the end, even though I joined 10 minutes after the class. But I really enjoy it, even though I was in a commercial bus that I could not make any noise and then see anything in the bus. So thank you very much, Prof. God bless you. I have really enjoyed it. And then have a very good evening, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody with a question so far or something to comment on the presentation on the
Not a
multi-stakeholder?
question really. Yeah, I want to join my colleagues in appreciating you for the presentations yesterday and today. Although we have time difference, in Kenya we began well past 9, and at the moment it is 11, a few minutes past 11. So as any adult learning, there are so many competing activities with adults. I hear from Ghana, one of the participants was traveling, and with the traveling, even the attention is not there. So I want to implore upon the participants to take this very seriously. I like the program, and it is very close to my heart, and I want it to continue. The only problem I have is the time. If you could bring the time forward, say we begin earlier than 9 Kenyan time, that would be very good. It would make us participate actively and effectively. Otherwise, I want to wish everybody well and thank you, presenter. That is a good presentation. I have a background in peace and conflict, and I'm also a trained mediator in Kenya.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. And thank you,
Thank
Dr. Amitepe, for joining us this evening. We appreciate your efforts. And Dr. Paul, based on, because of you are in Kenya and some people are also in Ghana, some are in Cameroon, it makes it difficult when it comes to cross-border time scheduling because mostly in Ghana, it's 6 p.m. and it's 6, that is when a lot of them have closed from work. Some of them have not even gotten home. In Kenya, that is 9 p.m. At first, we used to start at 5, then we close at 8. But I realized that the 5 wasn't helping because a lot of people might have closed at that time. They just closed and they are joining the class, which was difficult for them. That's why we shifted it to 6 so that we can give them some 1 hour after their work and they can join. So please bear with us. I understand how the time is not convenient for you, but please bear with us as we accommodate others from Ghana and also others from Cameroon. We start at 7, so Cameroon will be like 10 there now. Nigeria same. So thank you all for joining us. We will see you tomorrow as we continue. Unless maybe Dr. Amitepe want to say something. If not, then this is where we'll end for today.
Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to meet all these big individuals that are on the program. And we still continue. So I wish you well in your endeavors. We meet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And if you pass through anywhere Cape Coast, you can go and look for Dr. Amitepe at the Peace Department at the University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast. Okay, all right. So thank you all, and please do have a good evening, good night. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.